My name is Owen Keeler, and I will be presenting along with Loren, Sloan, Trevor, Maxon, and Kaylee Quant about the contributing factors of sex trafficking and the possible solutions. 24.9 million people are sex trafficked on average across the globe annually. The issue is due to the numerous factors that lead people to being sex trafficked and prohibiting victims from ever leaving their perpetrators.
Human trafficking is defined as the use, force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or sexual commercial act. The Indiana Journal of Global Legal Studies has found that traffickers target individuals who have experienced child sex abuse, psychological trauma, homelessness, drug dependency, or social isolation. These factors make a person an appealing target to traffickers because of their increased vulnerability as a result of their suffering. Once victims are pulled into the trade, it is very hard for them to escape. Some reasons victims have reported that have caused them to stay in their situations are fear, debt, bondage, dependency and isolation, shame and guilt, and religious belief. If and when victims escape their traffickers, a student from the Gold School of Law University concludes from a study she conducted that victims commonly suffer from anxiety, panic disorder, major depression, intense feelings of shame, substance abuse, and eating disorders. Even if victims are saved from sex trafficking, the post-effects impact them for the rest of their lives. That is why it is very important that we find methods to decrease the rate of sex trafficking.
To address the problems and be able to propose solutions, we presented the question on the screen. What are the contributing factors that constrain victims and attract perpetrators into the sex trafficking market globally?
After researching our question through different perspectives, we argue that different cultural, financial, and environmental situations create the different factors that cause sex trafficking and have a negative impact on victims for the rest of their lives. Gender inequality in women, poor families, and financial gain are what attract perpetrators into what can be compared to today as modern-day slavery.
The first subject of issues is the social and environmental issues. The Indiana Journal of Global Legal Studies has found that people with a history of child sex abuse, psychological issues, homelessness, drug dependency, and social isolation are much more appealing targets to traffickers due to their increased vulnerability as a result of this suffering. Traffickers also strategically target poor areas because desperate, needy people are more likely to comply with them. Ray, who is a professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, shares that traffickers lure girls by presenting a splendid picture of life in the big cities with enough income for themselves and for their families. In situations of dire necessity, these girls, whether convinced or not, take risks and accompany their recruiters, eventually getting trafficked. Because these girls have no other source of income to help them survive, they are easily take the opportunity presented to them, no matter how risky or dangerous. Some victims have reported that they were subjected to trafficking by their own families because they were thrown out of their home, handed over to a trafficker, or they directly involved themselves in the trafficking to make money.
Adding on to what Loren said about how vulnerable environments can cause victims to be easily lured into trafficking situations, traffickers know how to identify vulnerabilities and manipulate their victims to comply with their needs. A previous victim, Jessica Weiss, states that pimps target the most vulnerable youth and slowly build their trust with false promises of a better life. In the picture above, it shows that 1 in 5 youth have been a victim of sex trafficking, and it is common for young adult females and teenagers to get pulled into the market. Because they're in their most vulnerable state of life, they tend to seek for male validation, which could eventually lead them to get sex trafficked. Since women at this age are still developing, a traumatic experience such as this can cause them to develop further mental issues and have a negative impact on the victims for the rest of their lives.
The next set of issues is the cultural issues. In Western countries like America, they have strict regulations against trafficking, but the political divide makes it impossible to have a complete solve of the issue. In a study done by an associate professor at John Jay Criminal Justice School, the study showed Democrats want to make all sex work illegal because they don't see it as real work. On the other side, Republicans see legal sex work seen in Las Vegas as work. The complete different beliefs creates an issue on a total, creates an issue that cannot create a total resolve. On the other hand, countries with corruption use sex traffic as a way of profit. They take money from organizations that traffic as a cut to let them operate in their country. For example, China and North Korea do this. Other countries hit by mass poverty like Nigeria and other African countries are unable to stop the flow of people because of the people being willing to join the perpetrators. This was shown in a study done by the Canadian Mennonite University, showing the pressure of the poverty creates people to be desperate and join the perpetrators.
The final topic we discussed were the financial issues revolving around sex trafficking. Families in need of money will often sell their children if they cannot afford to educate them. Poverty-stricken people will also search and find risky job opportunities presented by traffickers, often under false pretenses. In some cultures, as Trevor mentioned, the use of sex work is normalized to afford bare essentials. However, perpetrators will often charge inflated prices to their victims for transportation, toiletries, and much more, adding to the debt they owe. This debt adds up very quickly, and quotas often required by the trafficker are not able to be fulfilled, restricting victims from ever leaving their perpetrator and being debt-free. If given the chance to escape, in a sense, victims will actually become perpetrators themselves and continue the flow of sex trafficking. According to Abosedi Babatunde, who is a PhD in peace and conflict studies, this, along with large tax-free profits and low risk, attracts perpetrators and helps them to thrive. According to the infographic shown, the three main causes of sex trafficking is the high reward and low risk, supply and demand, and systemic inequalities. Sex trafficking produces a lot of revenue, as shown in the background information. And according to Hannah Gold, who is a member of the End Trafficking Project, it is almost the most profitable illegal industry, second only to drug trade. Next, supply and demand go hand in hand. As the more demand there is for sex workers, the more sex workers there will be supplied and typically exploited from. Lastly, as mentioned before, systemic inequalities and disparities such as poverty and lack of education make for an easy target for perpetrators. To deter the flow of sex trafficking, we have listed three possible solutions that could change this modern-day slavery for the better. The first possible solution is restitution. Increased required monetary payments and longer jail time aims to set higher risk for anyone convicted of sex trafficking and set an example for others. For instance, if a perpetrator was convicted of sex trafficking and forced to pay $1 million in restitution charges or serve a life sentence, other traffickers would be more worried about the risk. In turn, this could slow the market down monumentally. A disadvantage would be that it does not promise to rehabilitate those convicted, just punish them. In order to actually help them, we need to improve the system.
This moves us to the second possible solution, which is rehabilitation. Requiring therapy sessions for convicts while in and out of jail could be a positive method to help improve their mindset, create a better environment, and provide more jobs for more people. According to Swanee Hunt, the former United States ambassador to Austria, the group Sex Addicts Anonymous explained that when we started attending SAA meetings, we heard stories similar to ours and realized that recovery was possible. This demonstrates the high chance therapy meetings similar to SAAs will be in aiding the rehabilitation of sex trafficking convicts.
The third and final solution would be to implement an international law. This law would make selling and buying sex illegal. The basis of the law comes from Sweden's sex purchase of 1999. The law made buying sex illegal and selling sex illegal. This destroyed the issue because it destroyed the market. But as seen, the cons are very prominent because cost and enforcement is nearly impossible for the act to be successful. Because of corruption and poverty, overall cultures, it is hard to enforce an international law not everyone will follow. Some countries may not have quality therapists.
Our proposed solution is a combination of the two we felt could have the most ideal outcomes, but could still be slightly altered. Increasing convicts' jail time would decrease the trafficking market because they would be in prison for longer periods of time. Increasing monetary payments would make it difficult for convicts to get out on such a low fine and would require someone of a high-class financial status to bail them out. Lastly, requiring therapy for convicts, it would not only decrease the likelihood of them developing further mental issues, but it would also create more jobs and opportunities in prisons for psychiatrists and psychologists to develop and further their education.
Because of corruption, poverty, and overall cultures, it is hard to enforce an international law. Not everyone would follow. Some countries might not have quality therapists, and the overall political tensions would make this hard to implement. But it would slow trafficking down.